Dr. Joellen Chatham. She is the former chair of the World Affairs Council of Orange County, community leader and a great friend of ours, great friend of the council. And she is going to introduce a very special documentary that recently aired on PBS SoCal. Please welcome Dr. Joellen Chatham.
The Iranian American community in the United States needed to be introduced to the broader population. John Zogby, who is a major pollster, had done a poll for a major Iranian American organization called PIAT, the Public Affairs Alliance for Iranian Americans. And in that poll, Zogby found that about 80% of the Americans had never knowingly met an Iranian American. 20% had met an Iranian American, and the good news is about 90% of them said they were nice, we liked them. The problem is, though, the poll also showed that if the United States were to have hostilities with the country of Iran, those good feelings would go down. And that's true in any situation. When countries go to war, people change their attitudes toward the population. And what concerned me was the 80% of Americans who had never met an Iranian American. Their view of this population would be what you see on the news about a government in Iran that I think everyone in this room finds is rather abhorrent. Many have gone to France, England, Switzerland, but the ones who come to the United States are, by documentation, the most affluent, most educated of all immigrants that come to the United States, and they're making a great contribution. It's a community we love, it's a community you all get to know better, and because of this documentary, we hope that will happen across the United States. So please enjoy these brief excerpts.
Relations between Iran and the U.S. had been flourishing for much of the 20th century, beginning in part when Reza Pahlavi, a high-ranking army officer, took control of the country, becoming the Shah of Iran in 1925. In 1941, his son, Mohammad Reza, took over as Shah. A weaker leader than his father, he all but lost power in the 1950s to an elected government that marginalized him. The British and Americans, however, fearful they'd lose influence over Iran and its oil, overthrew the democratically elected prime minister, giving Mohammad Reza Shah virtually unchallenged authority.
We have no other nation on earth who is closer to us, and there is no leader with whom I have a deeper sense of personal gratitude and personal friendship.
Under the Shah's rule, Iran and the U.S. grew increasingly close. Diplomatic relations strengthened and trade grew exponentially. Many Americans also went to live and work in Iran.
The political convulsions in Iran continue, and the government appointed by the Shah apparently has been toppled.
1979 marked a change for Iran. The largely secular government led by the Shah came to an end as he and his family fled, and the country underwent a revolution. While many Iranians had prospered under the Shah's rule, others were enraged by the growing disparity between classes. Many also considered him corrupt, a mere tool of the U.S., and oppressive, often violently, to his opposition.
In Iran, in 1979, I was only 8.5 years old, so I was mostly in school. A lot of things were happening everywhere. We were scared because there were a lot of bloodshed. There were a lot of demonstrations. There were a lot of anger.
The solution for the revolutionaries was to usher in a new leader. Their choice was the Ayatollah Khomeini. Exiled from Iran for years, he promised a new Iran, a classless society, rooted in Islamic belief, with no corruption and equal opportunity for all. A nation that would be based on independence and freedom. These were his promises, but as the world soon learned, they were short-lived.
It turned very quickly. In terms of all the promises that Khomeini had made about secular democracy and all of that, it was very clear within the first few months that none of that is going to happen.
the Ayatollah formed a new Republic of Iran where Islamic law ruled and dissent was not tolerated. Many of those associated with the Shah or those politically opposed to the new regime faced imprisonment or execution. Those who could afford to leave, in large part people who'd benefited from the Shah's policies, did so, fleeing the country with their families. In most cases, these were people with means, primarily secular Muslims and religious and ethnic minorities. On November 10, 1979, ties between the U.S. and Iran were severed completely, as a group of several hundred Iranian students joined the anti-American fervor, stormed the American embassy in Tehran, and took dozens of Americans hostage. The students' primary demand was that America send the Shah back to Iran for trial. The very next day, the Ayatollah made his famous declaration that America was the great Satan. In November 1980, the drama in Iran intensified when Iraq, sensing a weakened Iran and a chance to take new lands rich with oil, attacked, beginning a war that would last 8 years. While small numbers of Iranians had been moving to the U.S. for decades, by the 1970s they were coming in the tens of thousands, some for work, but many more for education.
Going to the United States for education was something that I look forward to, so did many of my contemporaries. When I ultimately came to the States just before the revolution, there were about 50,000 Iranian students in this country, or about 20% of the total foreign student population in the country.
In my family, my dad, he always wanted to send his kids to the States because he thought, you know, this is where things were happening. So before me, my 2 older brothers had come here. And then by the time it was my turn, the path was very clear.
I graduated in Iran in 1975. I got my master's in English as a second language. And I was offered a scholarship to come to get my PhD in the United States.
The expectation that we had when we came here was that we would get our education here and then go back to Iran. That's what most people who came and studied in the United States did. As it turned out, the Iranian Revolution interfered with those plans.
There is not a side of me which is Iranian and a side of me which is American. It's sort of like scrambled eggs. When you scramble it, the white and the yolk, you can't separate it anymore. I don't know. I mean, this is who I am now. You know, my Iranian identity and American identity are woven together into a fabric, which is me right now.
We sometimes think in Farsi, we sometimes think in English. We sometimes count in Farsi, we sometimes count in English. We're truly dual cultured in that sense.
I'm American in the sense that I'm an optimist, and I think that everybody has a voice that they should use. So that is completely American. I'm Iranian in that I like to feed people, and I'm very loyal.
Being of Iranian heritage clearly is something that I'm proud of. I'm proud of the fact that, you know, the family is such an important unit where I grew up. That to me is what's made me. It's what made my kids. It's what's made my husband's family. It's just all of us being together like that. Clearly there's a history associated with it. There's all these cultural factors. There's the poetry, there's the music. I mean, these are things that we've all grown up with. And I don't know why one would want to let go of that, because it enriches our lives. It's enriched my life. I hope it's enriched my kids' lives. And I hope they will pass it on generation to generation. And I certainly hope it's enriched the lives of other non-Iranian Americans around me.